Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Marketing Scientists. Today, we're going to be talking to Rishabh, who is the CEO and co founder of FERMÄT. He founded FERMÄT to help brands seamlessly integrate commerce into every piece of content, driving distribution at the speed of content creation. He's worked with popular brands like True Classic, Nood, and OpenStore. Before FERMÄT, Rishabh spent multiple years at LiveRamp building new businesses. And he also holds a PhD from MIT, so he's truly a scientist. Three things that I think you'll really enjoy in this episode. Rishabh and I talked about how all the privacy changes have changed the game for brands and advertisers, the right and wrong way to experiment in marketing, and finally, an always on discussion on brand and performance when it comes to measurement. So let's dive straight in. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me. I think this is going to be fun. I have so many questions for you because you and I have talked, and met over the last few months, and I think we share a lot of views on advertising, on marketing, on growth, and I want to
Totally.
get into, FERMÄT. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly,
Yeah.
and get into sort of what you all do. So why don't we actually start with that, Rishabh? So tell me, how did you come up with the concept behind this, and what was the hypothesis that you started the business with?
Oh, yeah, totally. And I think you'll appreciate this actually. So I used to work at a company called LiveRamp. And so for those listening who may not know, LiveRamp provides the digital identity backbone for basically all of ad tech. So everywhere where you're stitching together my cookie ID from a browser to a mobile ID to my email address to my phone number to my home address, that reconciliation is all powered by LiveRamp's identity backbone. And just to give context, it's like a 700 million ARR company that's publicly traded. So this is like, it's truly a big company powering identity on the open web. And in 2020, so let's take a step back. Everybody knows ATT in 2020. What most people don't know is 2017, which is ITP. So at LiveRamp, we knew all of these changes as they were happening. So in 2017, ITP happened, which said, hey, we're actually going to reduce your ability to track with third-party cookies on Safari. It just so happens that most people don't use Safari, so they didn't care. And then 2020, they implemented ATT, and it turns out most people have an iPhone, especially the spending population. And so that had a big impact. And so my hypothesis was, we know that this is going to demolish e-commerce. And in 2021, so I quit LiveRamp because I was like, this is too big of an opportunity to stay inside of LiveRamp and not do something about the fact that you're no longer going to be able to find the right people to bring to your website. And so I left. And in 21, I remember talking to CMO saying, hey, what are you doing about the cookie going away? Or sorry, the fact that you can no longer track on mobile ID. And they were like, what are you talking about? And I was like, the Apple thing. And then they were like, oh, yeah, my agency's got it. And then it turned into, oh, yeah, Facebook's got it. Yeah. And then in early 22, it turns out that it is what it is. It's a policy decision and nobody's got it. And it's not gettable, right? Mm-hmm. And so my hypothesis was, the reason you need an identifier is that every piece of content all converges to a single website. What if every piece of content went to a unique website? And then it obviates the need for tracking entirely, because any interaction that happens on that website by definition came from that ad. And then you actually don't even care that it's Pranav or Rishabh. You just care that it's like someone who came from that piece of content, who got attracted to that piece of content and then converted on the subsequent website. And so that was it. That was the entire idea.
It makes a lot of sense, right? So what you're saying is, instead of trying to decompose the people who are on your website and where they came from, because you're creating that funnel from the ad to a specific landing page, well, yeah, there's no other way that they could have gotten to that landing page if they didn't click through that ad. So you have very good tracking,
Totally.
right? Am I getting that right? Perfect. And
Yeah. And it's an old idea. That's
it's an
the
old
beautiful
idea.
thing
No, you're
about it.
100% right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's Red Ventures. Remember, they bought like tens of millions of dollars worth of phone numbers and then just put a different phone number on every billboard.
Yeah.
It turns
Yeah.
out it works.
Yeah. No, it's such a simple idea and still sort of so impactful. And what's interesting is what you're talking about could work for e-commerce. It could work for B2B. Like lots of B2B companies do landing pages for the exact same reason, right? Is it makes tracking a lot easier. And that's awesome. That's great. I didn't know the founding story, so that's super awesome. So you've been around for the last like 3 years, is that right?
Almost. It'll be 3 years in November.
Awesome. Okay. So talk to me about sort of what is going to happen next, right? So you built that, you talk about sort of funnels in the same way as, ads and all that fun stuff. But what's next? What happens once a brand is up and running? They've got all these, hundreds or thousands of landing pages from their individual ads. What happens after that for them to then generate more value through FERMAT?
Yeah. So it sounds great to say, hey, you can have a unique site for every piece of content. It turns out nobody has ever operated that way. Like the way that people have operated is I have my website and I do CRO on my website and I have one or two landing pages for specific angles that I want to test. And when you give them this new tool, they kind of are like, okay, you tell me what to do, right? You're the one who said this is going to work. So show me. And that's like a perfectly fair response. And so like what actually happens, and this is sort of like part of the value of how we operate, is we actually inform those strategies. So like we tell you, like let's say you're a beauty company, we tell you for this piece of content for selling these types of products, here's what the shopping experience should look like.
Mm.
And the reason we can do that is because not only do we enable the brand to build all of these site experiences, but we actually host and operate all of those experiences and we actually generate it. So 100% of what a consumer sees and interacts with is by definition tagged in a way in which our ML systems can understand them. And so we can actually then generate the next best idea for the next brand based on the sort of aspects of it that are similar and the aspects of it that are different. And so I liken it to like Facebook ads, which is, Facebook says like, tell me the creative. And then ASC basically is the campaign style where you give it the creative and it'll find the people for you.
Yeah.
It's like a similar thing, except for the post click, right? And I would say we're in the Canva stage of our journey. So we're like the Canva for post click experiences. And then we're on the journey to being the meta for post click experiences.
That's cool. So, on that point, and you mentioned a few buzzwords there, right? You talked about machine learning, ML. You mentioned ASC from Meta, right? Do you think? And there was this like bold statement from Mark about, Mark
I love it.
Zuckerberg at Meta, right?
Yeah.
Where he was like, everything's just going to happen through, you're just going to tell us like your budget and your, some sort of attributes for targeting and your product, and then we do everything else. Do you how far are we from that being a reality, do you think?
3 to 4 years.
Oh wow,
I mean,
really?
yeah. And I think that's like a pessimistic prediction. I remember, I'll share a story which has like useful parallels. In 2019, one of my friends who is like a technologist through and through, like he got his PhD in computer science. He has been like in CS or product management his whole career. He's a little bit older than me. In 2019, I bought a Tesla. And I said to him, in 5 years, this thing is going to drive itself. And there will be cars that get me from my place to your place within a 5-minute error of me driving myself. And he was like,
Mhm.
there's no way. He's like, there's just no way.
Yeah.
It's 2024. And guess what? Waymos work.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
if a car can drive itself, I am pretty confident that Facebook is going to be able to like take a creative, take an objective. Now, the problem is that Facebook actually does not have good control over the post click experience.
Right.
And so they have a missing piece there, but they will be able to drive the best possible traffic given what the post click experience is. So they will have to learn whatever they can learn about your website. I mean, assuming you don't use a system like ours, and then they'll do their best. But for sure, it's going to be possible.
That's pretty cool. And I like that. I think that story is very much on point. If Waymo can get you from point A to point B with a very little margin of error, why can't we do ads on Meta, right? Like that seems like a relatively straightforward problem compared to that. That's awesome. Okay, so on that note, so you went from being you were at MIT, you were doing a PhD in like something completely unrelated. How did you go
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
from that to doing this? What was the journey? And the related question that I have is, do you think that marketing and growth is getting to the point where you're going to start to see more of that, where you have
Oh,
folks from a
100%.
science background, coming into this? And why? Why is that happening?
Yeah. So, do you know Eric Seifert by any chance?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, mobile. Okay, okay. So him and I agree on this thesis that marketing used to be like economics, basically. So like highly statistical. You would see a bunch of people who were trained in economics or trained in statistics. Like they would go to finance first, and then from finance move to marketing. It was like a very typical career trajectory, especially performance marketing, right? So that's sort
Mhm.
of like where the whole performance marketing and the tie between the CFO and CMO sort of like burgeoned from. And then over the last like 15 years, I mean, Meta made it so easy to buy ads that you didn't need to have that training. And so you had, and by the way, to be fair and clear, the important skill became creative, right?
Mm.
So the less important skill became statistics, and the more important skill became creative. And so you had a shift in who was the type of marketer, or especially the type of CMO that was most valuable for those companies, correctly so, most valuable for those companies. And now there's a shift back because now you're going to have to do actually even more sophisticated statistics in order to understand what's happening with your marketing spend, right? I mean, I will like, you know, till the end of this company joke about the fact that all we do is like hit a button on Meta and then look at the 1 day click ROAS because it like kills my CMO whenever I say that. And so just because I know how much he hates it, I'm just going to keep doing it over and over again. But like obviously my actual belief is not that. Like my actual belief is that it's like a very, we have basically gotten to a place where attribution is effectively useless.
Mm.
To be totally candid, right? I mean, like the best thing that I use my Facebook CAC for, honestly, is a health indicator of the rest of my marketing. So it's
Mm.
like CAC is going up on my Facebook and LinkedIn spend as like a B2B company or even as a D2C company. It actually kind of doesn't matter. Is just a reflection of the rest of my marketing activities. What is their health level? So when they're very healthy, I will observe a lower CAC. And when they're
Mm.
unhealthy, I will observe a higher CAC. And so it's
Mm.
actually like, I would call it more like a litmus test at this point than a useful tool for attribution.
Yeah.
And in fact, I actually view things entirely based on incrementality.
Mm.
And then we're not yet at the point at which, like at least for our business, that we can actually use media mix modeling to like drive. But
For
for
sure.
sure, we do everything on the basis of incrementality.
Yeah, and I think there's a misconception, right, that you need to do media mix modeling for like early stage companies. You don't, right? You could run pretty good quasi
On your
experiments.
P&L.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And you run a few ads in a certain geography and you see what that's doing to your traffic and your leads and whatever for a B2B example, right? And you don't need sophisticated tech to be able to do that when you're just starting out. It gets more complicated when you like, growing up and you have like tens of millions of dollars
Totally.
of spend and like need to slice and dice the data a gazillion different ways. Okay, so you touched on this point. You were talking about your discussion with Eric, and you know, statistics, creative, and I wanted to ask you about the creative side. You work with lots of interesting e-commerce brands, and these terms get thrown around in marketing, right? Performance marketing, brand marketing, and my take, and I think you said something interesting on Twitter, like you've come to the conclusion that everything is brand marketing or everything is performance marketing.
Totally.
You might have said something like that, maybe.
I said
Um,
everything is brand marketing. It's just how well can you measure it? That's it.
yes, okay,
That's what I said. I was like, what I have come. I used to think that performance marketing is the only thing that matters, and now what I've come to realize is everything is brand marketing. It's just a question of how well can you measure it.
great. So let's talk about that. Have you seen any of your customers do something completely out of the box when it comes to, brand marketing or things that are harder to measure, or and have been effective to drive results?
Totally. I mean, I would say that the best story, the one that get like, they're not a customer of ours, but I've known the founders from like industry events, and they tell this story all the time. Is Jolie Skincare? It's like a shower which has like a filter in it that you replace for like
Yeah.
beauty purposes, actually. And so these guys run all sorts of wild out of home uh, like campaigns. So they'll like cover a truck with a decal essentially that says like this truck is dirtier than your shower water, or
Mm,
they'll put like stickers on the pavement in New York City saying like uh the only thing dirtier than this martini is your your water in your tap, like that sort of
nice.
stuff. And so, and they like, again, they actually observe it similarly to how I described what we do. Those actions then drive a lower CAC on their paid spend. But they
Hmm.
don't they don't they don't mistake where who's the driver and then who's the receiver, right? The receiver for them is their paid media, and they can see that those types of out of home actions drive a lower CAC for them. And they have like, I mean, this is like very geo specific, right? They do these things in New York City, and so it's very easy to tell, because it's geo specific, the impact that it's having based on the geography, right? I mean, there's things you can do nowadays with like some amount of geo based data,
Yep.
and like IP tracking and things like that, that help you sort of triangulate the effectiveness. So it's not like they're doing things blind, right? It's obviously very thoughtful, but you're able to drive totally like crazy strategies that you would not think are easy to measure, and you can see the effect very, very clearly.
Yeah, I think it's a great, especially sort of out of home stuff. One of the companies that we work with, partner AdQuick, what they kind of say is your out of home strategy is actually a great feeder into your social strategy, because everyone loves talking about the crazy wild, out of home stuff on Twitter and on LinkedIn and on, online channels, which is really interesting. Okay,
Totally.
so on that point, so you talk about Fermat's journey up until now being, helping you build these experiences, post-click experiences. Um, what else is coming next? Where do you think that that's going to go? Where is Fermat going, in the next 12 months with your roadmap, with your sort of strategy, and what will brands be able to do that they can't do today?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really going from that Canva to the Facebook vision, which is you'll just actually you won't even tell us. So Facebook, you'll have to tell what your objective is. Uh, and for us, what you'll do is you'll just plug us into your front end and your back end, and the entire thing will just be generated for you. And the reason
Mm,
that that's possible actually is very interesting. It's because you must tell your front end media platforms what your objective is and what your goals are. So, for example, like your Klaviyo, email, your HubSpot, if you're B2B, your Facebook ads, your LinkedIn ads. But all of that data for how the campaign is set up is actually readable by APIs in 100% of these systems. And so we'll just read that. We'll actually read the profiles of the people that that's attracting, which is also accessible. We'll read all of the information about what products are being purchased, how they're being purchased, why they're being purchased, what gets purchased next. And then it's actually somewhat obvious when I say this, like the store experience, you should know how to generate it at that point, assuming you work with enough brands and enough companies that you have data signal on the actual purchase journey based on the type of campaign that's being run, right? And so
Yep.
like we'll just be able to generate that, and so it'll be like this, and then not only will we be able to generate it, we'll be able to infinitely test it from that point, right? So you'll like generate a V0 which has high confidence, like 70% confidence, and then you'll just do like not A/B testing, but you'll actually do a binary search to the optimal configuration, right? And so you'll actually drive outcomes significantly faster than you would. And it's like this is like a system that, I mean, sorry, it does exist. Booking.com has a system like this, but literally no one else has a system like this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Booking is a great case study, right? They do so much experimentation, and I think they've written a whole bunch of papers on like the A/B testing
Yeah.
philosophy that they have, and that's how they've been able to kind of maintain and build their market share.
The most interesting thing that people don't appreciate about Booking.com, which is like, the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed, is that no two people will ever see the same Booking.com website. So like when I go and when you go, it's actually different in ways in which may not be obvious to us, but they are different.
Yeah.
And that simple fact is actually the indicator of the future, where today other websites, like when you and I go, I mean, not TikTok also does a very good job of this, but like any brand website, you and I go, that website is the same.
Yeah.
And that's like fundamentally the thing that needs to change.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, there's a bunch of people doing very similar things on the B2B side, right? I think there's a company called Mutiny that's trying to,
Yep.
personalize sort of, web pages and landing pages for specific, demand gen campaigns. Do you ever see, like, maybe you don't want to talk about it, but do you ever see also going into the B2B world, or do you see
Totally.
like, nope? Yeah.
100%.
Oh, okay. Cool.
No. I mean, I'm more than happy to talk about it. Yeah. We will 100% go into B2B. And I think
Nice.
that, and if somebody from Mutiny is listening to this, like, I'm excited to compete, competition makes everybody better, all that sort of good stuff. The thing that I think is fundamentally different about what Mutiny believes and what we believe, and I think that the quote unquote product view that is fundamentally different, is Mutiny came in with the view that they want to make it really simple for you to start. The consequence of that philosophy is that the only thing you can do is change the CSS on your page. So have you ever worked with Mutiny by any chance?
I haven't. No, I haven't had that honor.
Okay. So you basically, the only thing you can do is change the CSS on your page. So basically it's like you can change the text, you can change the colors, you can change a little bit of the layout, and that's it. And like philosophically, where we came from was actually the exact opposite, which is no, you don't get to decide what the page is. We're going to generate the whole page. So you plug us into your backend and into your media assets, and we generate the whole thing. And those are two very different philosophies. And so, like, yes, we will ultimately be competing for the same dollar, but we have not the same product vision. And so we'll see which product vision is the right one. Yeah.
That's fascinating. And you're almost kind of then talking about a highly composable, storefront or website or whatever you want to call it. And I mean, I could imagine you just replacing Shopify someday, right? Or replacing like all the CMS.
We don't want to do the back end. No, we don't want to do the back end.
Got it.
Yeah. So we don't want to do the back end. We don't want to hold the media prop assets. We don't want to do any of that.
Got it.
What we believe actually, and this is like very esoteric, and so like VCs hate when I say this, but it's the truth. It's like what we're actually replacing is the cookie. Because the cookie's job used to be, hey, this is like information that you can use to determine what to show when the page loads. And what's going to happen is our data asset and the way we integrate with all these systems is going to be the information that you use to decide what to show. And it happens to be a full stack version of it, which is, hey, the only way we can do that is then we are responsible for actually showing that thing too.
Yeah.
Right. And so the way I think about like the value opportunity here is all of the value that's getting destroyed by the eradication of the cookie and the mobile ID as a system, right?
Yeah.
And then of course there's like measurement implications of this too, right? But as a system, all of that value that's getting just straight destroyed, there's an opportunity to recreate at least some of that value, if not all of it. And that's a large amount of value, right? So
Yeah. On that point, so we all heard the news that the third-party cookie deprecation from Google is, again, right,
gone.
on hold, and
No,
now
it's
they're talking
gone.
about
They're not going to do it.
right. But like they might introduce something different, right? And they're talking to regulators about now like doing that thing, and who knows what that's going to be. And and the question that I have for you is, there's a lot of noise and we talk a lot about this in marketing, but in reality, if you think about the open web where cookies actually sort of have an impact, it's actually a very small portion of your total digital ad spend, right? Most of your ad spend is happening on Meta, on Google, on these closed walled gardens. Like the Trade Desk is probably the only company that's like a massive company in terms of what's happening on the open web. So is this even a big enough problem? And I'm not talking specifically to like what FERMAT does. I'm not just thinking broadly about third party cookies. Like, do we make a mountain out of a molehill when we talk about this stuff?
No.
No?
No.
All right.
I totally disagree. I
like it.
I think it's disastrous. Yeah. Okay, and let me be clearly specific. So first of all, it is for sure true that it has zero impact on meta ads for people who purchase in the browser that pulls up in app, because that's a Safari instance of a browser anyway, where there's no tracking anyway. So all of that impact has already been felt. But the number of people who purchase in that fashion is very small. So even Facebook, if you were to look in your Facebook and look at like how many people purchase immediately, how many people purchase in 7 days, how many people purchase like in 28 days, the fraction that purchase immediately is very small. It tends to be, in the best case, 30%, right? The only reason Facebook is able to track across browsers is because Facebook has the unique advantage that you're logged in everywhere, right? So you're in the app and they can figure it out and they can stitch that to when you're on your browser, which is your Chrome browser, because you also log into Facebook on your Chrome browser, which is unusual. Like most other apps don't have this advantage, which is where the big misunderstanding of TikTok comes from. Like people always wonder, like, why can't TikTok ads be as good as Facebook? It's because nobody in their right mind logs into TikTok from their browser on their computer. They only go to TikTok on their phone. And so the addressability is lower because there is no second login instance. I mean, this is like, we are so in like the nerd weeds at this point, but maybe this is useful for some people. And so the reason that the cookie going away is so impactful is all of that post immediate tracking that happens as a consequence of this login behavior that's on your Chrome browser is going to end. And so the impact that Facebook saw from the loss of signal within iOS is going to get further exaggerated by the fact that now it is no longer going to get signal if you opt out, however you are allowed to from Google, from tracking of your Chrome browser.
Right.
Not only that,
totally
email, SMS, all of those campaigns. How does email and SMS, when you log into your Klaviyo or your HubSpot or whatever, how do they track? They drop a cookie.
Yeah.
And then they figure out what actions get taken afterward. I mean, this thing is going to be a disaster. Yeah. In fact, it's going to be such a big disaster that it's great for your business and my business. I mean, not to be glib, but it's just true, right? I mean, Like
That's the
it's
objective reality.
and
You know, you're 100% right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and the
And
reason it's going to be great for us is like nobody's going to prepare for it.
yeah,
It doesn't matter how many times I say it's a disaster, nobody's going to prepare for it.
yeah. What's your take on, and you know, one of the things that folks have done, right? Like even LinkedIn has done this now. They have these CAPI integrations, right? The conversion API integrations to kind of, you know, uh,
Totally.
somewhat sort of counter for this, right? Which is like passing in your first party data into into LinkedIn, into Meta, into, and I don't think everybody does it consistently. I don't think X has that. I don't know if TikTok has it. I don't think so. And so do you imagine that that's going to be the future where everyone's just piping all their first party data into every single ad platform, and you know that's becomes the way to then connect the dots between everything?
Yes, but what are you going to send? So yes, it has to. There's so many pragmatic problems and structural problems though that are just no matter what the server side integration is, it just doesn't matter. So here's like a simple example. I send you an email from HubSpot. Okay, you're in my marketing list, and I'm at FERMAT, right? And I'm like, hey, Pranav, you should buy FERMAT. And you're like, okay, that's a nice email. You click on it, and then you're like, oh man, my kid's screaming. And then you like walk away, and then tomorrow you wake up and you're like, oh yeah, that FERMAT thing. I need to go check it out. So you like type FERMAT into the browser. In today's world, great. I had already dropped the cookie on you. I know you're back. I know you're like going to download the guide. When you download the guide, that's the moment where I now have the PII to actually send back server side through a CAPI integration. Otherwise, what the hell am I going to send back?
Yeah.
So the kerfuffle here is like, unless a first party action is taken, there is no signal to send. So that's like problem number one, right?
Mm.
Problem number two, which is a very real problem, is that it turns out people don't want to do these integrations. Like,
Mm.
go to any one of these companies, Snap, TikTok, LinkedIn, and go to their CAPI PM and ask them what they're working on.
Yeah.
100% of them are working on adoption. That is all they are working on. And
Yeah.
they're trying to like partner with agencies and other tech companies. And it's just like, we just need them to like do the CAPI integration and they're not doing it. And that's why it doesn't work. And that's why they won't spend with us. And it's like, yeah, well, no shit, because it's annoying.
Yeah. Very true. You know, on that front, I do have to give uh, you know, I have to give shit to every ad platform for making their UI so terrible. Like, I don't know if you follow a couple of the Twitter folks. I'm gonna have David Herman on the podcast soon,
Oh,
and he's
nice.
like
Yeah, yeah.
every day he posts like, "Here's what's broken about Meta today," and then the next day it gets worse and it gets worse. It's like the UI and the ways that you use these ad platforms has really become hard for an average marketer, right? Like there's no way you're going to be able to make good decisions. Like if David's having a hard time, imagine like, you know, us normies getting into there. And yeah, so I hope that people change that. I hope like Meta, Google, Snap, everybody kind of, you know, fixes
Yeah.
that.
I'll take the other side of that coin, which is
Mm,
like, I think the UI is terrible, but I think that's actually great because then agencies get more business. It
mm.
allows for agencies to build tech enabled platforms because then they're like, this UI is terrible. I'm just going to build against the API and build a UI that's easier to use for my way of ad buying. So I mean, like,
Sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, like just like Salesforce. Like Salesforce's UI is terrible, but
Yeah.
it turns out that actually there's like advantages to a terrible UI. Yeah.
You know, somebody told me that the services economy around Salesforce is a $17 billion market. It's like bonkers. There's $17 billion worth of, you know, money kind of flowing around with
Of
all the
revenue.
services on top. Yeah, on top of Salesforce consulting.
I'm surprised that it's that little, honestly.
Maybe that is an undercount. Like that doesn't count all the other software, right? This is literally just the services pieces.
Oh, got it. Okay, got it. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. Okay, okay.
All right. So we're gonna do a lightning round, Rishabh. This is gonna be fun. So um I'm going to give you a bunch of questions, and you're just going to answer like, as quickly as you can. If you want to expand on it, please expand. Okay. Do you think AI driven creative is ready for prime time? Can it replace human beings?
Totally. It just has to be on the nose. Like you just have to fully, just like a meme can be used. I think you can use AI driven creative, and I think it can be on the nose, and I think it can be super effective.
All right. Okay. If you had to choose for your own business to go all in on PMax or ASC or any of these fully automated solutions, are you doing it or are you staying away from it?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. Oh man, I'm a no. I'm a no. Yeah. Wow, good question. I'm a no. Yeah, I
All
just
right.
wouldn't do
Okay.
it. I just wouldn't do it. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Do you think that Google's recent monopoly case, right, them losing it, is that going to basically lead to a massive shakeup in Google?
yeah. I think that the reality of like these monopoly cases in general is that they end up doing close to nothing. I think the last time that it like had a real impact was Microsoft, and I think ever since then, like companies have wisened up and have created. So, like Facebook, for example, the reason, I mean, one of the reasons why all of their products are so integrated, like Instagram and Facebook, like the timing of when you logged in only one time across both of those apps was at the same time when there was like talks of like monopoly suits, for example. I mean, these companies are just smart at this point, and so like the pragmatic outcome, I think, is going to be limited.
Okay. So TikTok almost got banned, but it's still around and it's growing. What do you think happens next?
Yeah. I think it's like a political instrument. So I have no idea because like the politics change so fast that it's like sort of like like putting my finger in the air, and I am like totally unwilling to predict anything political anymore. And so
Love it.
that's like my honest view is I think like whether or not TikTok gets banned is entirely a political instrument, and so it's like
Yeah.
I think you should just operate as if it's not going to get banned, and then if it does, you just whatever you move on with your life. So
Yeah. Okay. What's the most unusual experiment you have personally conducted in marketing?
in marketing,
Yeah.
wow. Okay, so the thing that I think about experimentation that most people don't agree with is most people take a one variable at a time approach to experimentation, and I do not. So
Mm,
I take like a let's change everything at the same time approach, and then if it creates a change in outcomes, let's worry about understanding why it created a change after the fact. And I think that's the best way to create actual change in the organization. And so like a good example is we were basically doing no marketing until
mm,
the end of last year. And then we changed our website, we announced our fundraise, we did events for 3 weeks in a row, we launched content and started our newsletter all in the month of March. Okay. And so it's like, and then in the month of April, our growth rate tripled, right?
nice.
And so it's like, but Rishabh, which one of those things worked? And I'm like, my man, it doesn't matter. The business growth rate, not just the business, the growth rate has 3x.
Yeah.
Do you think anybody cares which one of those worked? It
Th-
worked. And
Well
that's the
said.
point. And so, and it's like, and I think that a lot of times people don't understand how to do experimentation. And now, look, we're like, at that time, we were early enough that taking that kind of risk was worth it. A lot of times people are not willing to take the risk because they have like $100 million business that's like humming. And so then what you need to do is you need to figure out, how do I take the swing while reducing risk? And this is like fundamentally the hardest thing for people to do, is to like understand that actually risk and experimentation can be decoupled. You just have to know how to do it, right? Like the restaurant industry, the way they do it, it's called Ohio, right? And so it's just like they run all their tests in Ohio, and then depending on how it works, they run it to the rest of the country, right? So I think like you have to think like, what is your Ohio, basically, is like what you've got to figure out.
I love it. What is your Ohio? That's going to go on a wall someday. Amazing. Okay, last one. If you could improve one aspect of FERMAT overnight, what would that be?
This is a hard question. This is a hard
We can
question.
skip it.
No, absolutely not. No. You're just gonna have to give me 10 seconds. Okay, I think if there's one thing that I would improve, or if I could like immediately switch overnight, it's making every person in the company actually feel like they are truly empowered and capable of taking ownership of the thing that they own. That, no matter how hard I try to do it, it's actually very hard for people to feel that way. They still ultimately feel like, hey, this other team needs to do X, this other team needs to do Y. Oh, like this person asked me to do X, and so I'm doing it. And like somehow, if I could like switch the behavior to like, no, actually, I'm just going to do what I think is best because I own this problem and this is the area that I own and I'm good at it. And if I could just get everybody in the company to believe that fully, I think that would be the single thing that I would switch.
That's such a good answer, Rishabh. That is amazing. I it's really hard, right, to create that culture and that behavior and that mindset of self-belief, and also the, hey, I'm not going to get punished if I make a mistake, if I go too far with my ownership. Right. It's hard. It's really
Which is
hard.
impossible. I mean,
Yeah.
especially like a company like ours. I mean, most companies, maybe in the healthcare industry, you don't want that, right?
Right.
Like if you're delivering care.
Yeah.
But in like marketing, I mean, you kind of want that. You want everybody to take risk that, like, honestly, if I heard about it, I would say no, but they just did it anyway because the downside is like actually kind of small, right?
Yeah, that's so well said. I had a previous guest on the podcast, and I asked them, like, do you think marketing can ever hurt? You know, bad marketing can ever hurt the business? And he had a great answer. He was like, no, because nobody cares. If it doesn't work, nobody sees it. Nobody cares. It's just like people move on. Their attention spans like go to the next swipe. So it makes complete sense. I agree. Well, Rishabh, this was great. Thank you for coming on. I enjoyed a lot. I learned a lot, and we agreed on a bunch of stuff. We disagreed on a bunch of stuff. That's how it should be. We'd love to do this again, and hopefully in a few more months, and we'll talk about sort of what else you all are working on. But thanks again for joining.
Of course, this was fun. Next time.
All right. So there we have it. That was Rishabh, the co-founder and CEO of FERMAT. Tune in again next week for more insightful conversations on all things marketing science. See you then.